Hello everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the tutorial lecture series on Masscom Naija, your favorite channel. I am Adeleke Adebusuyi, a registered practitioner in advertising with the Advertising Registration Council of Nigeria, and we'll be looking at news writing and reporting in this edition of the series. News writing and reporting. We will look at definitions of news. How do we define the news? We'll further look at news value. What are those things that make it into the news? What are the special characters those things need to possess to make it into the news? Then we will again look at sources of news. Where do we get news from? Is there a central repository where the news is? We just go there and pick, or there are technicalities to it. There are specific things to look out for that serve as sources of news. We'll discuss that. Then when we have sourced the news, when we have looked at different places to get it, or when we have looked at the processes of, we have followed the processes of getting it. How do we get it out to the people? That's the process of reporting, or the process of reportage. That's how we serve it when we have cooked it to the people. So we'll look at reporting the news. And after reporting the news, we'll look at some of the challenges of reportage, some of the challenges that come with reporting the news. We'll look at those challenges, and subsequently, we would look at how to mitigate or how to handle some of these challenges where they cannot be overcome, or how to overcome them outright when they can be overcome. Relax and follow closely as we go into the details of the discussion.
Here at Masscom Naija, we make your educational journey engaging and enjoyable. Connect with us via X, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram at Masscom Naija. Masscom Naija, where knowledge meets entertainment.
So let's get to the heart of it. What is news? An interesting take on that is we can say, what is news? News is anything that is new. Well, you will not be too far from the answer. News is anything that is new, but that will be very basic. That will be very pedestrian. But let's look at it with a bit of reference to people who are authorities in this thing. I would quote Mitchell Chanley. His definition of the news is that it is the timely report or the reports of facts or opinions that hold interest or importance, or both, for a considerable number of people. I'll take it again. Mitchell Chanley opines that news is the timely report or reports of facts or opinions that hold interest or importance, or both, for a considerable number of people. So let's try to break this down. It must be timely to be news. It must be factual, or an opinion that is based on expertise. Let me clarify that. An opinion, for instance, a few years ago, in the year 2020, the world witnessed the COVID-19 pandemic, and it affected everybody. And at that point, as the news of it was breaking, as people were getting to know about it, it became important that, because it was scary for a lot of people, it became important that they begin to get perspectives about it. So when experts, there was a certain Dr. Fauci, who is the leading virologist, that came to begin to give opinions about it, and whatever he says about it is news. So it is the opinion. That's where opinions make the news. It is based on the fact that he has expertise. Over the years, he has established himself as a leading voice in that field. So his opinion counts as news in that instance, looking at this definition. And the example of COVID I gave, it is relevant because at that point, though, for people like, for those of us who are in Nigeria, at that time, COVID was far when it started in Wuhan, China, when the first cases were recorded, and as it began to travel around the world, and more cases were recorded across the world, we became curious to know more as it was spreading. And we looked at some of the information we received from the news, from the things that are happening around, told us that it is going to affect us. It is going to affect a lot of people, and so because of that, it became very important for us to pay more attention to it. So it's going to affect a lot of people. It's going to impact on a lot of people, and indeed, COVID went ahead to impact the entire world. And even till now, we are still feeling the impact of COVID-19. So it tells us within the ambit of this definition that it is the timely report of facts or opinions that hold interest or importance, or both, for a considerable number of people. And let me further quote another expert, Okwechime. For Okwechime, news is any new or fresh information, tidings or reports of a recent event. News as new or fresh information, tidings or reports of a recent event. So to Okwechime, if it is not recent, if it is not recent, it is not news. If it is not information, if it is not fresh information, it is not news. So looking at Okwechime's definition, we can say that while something might have been happening before, it might be something we are used to, but if fresh facts emerge about it, if we have fresh information about it, it qualifies as news. And how do we relate this to real life? Okay, Nigeria just had elections in the year 2023. We had the presidential elections, and for each of the candidates, there were what we call opinion polls, and the opinion polls were quite interesting during the last round of elections. Traditional politicians were dislodged in the opinion polls largely, and it became interesting, and we began to look at the poll numbers, and each day we saw that an outlier was practically carrying the day, and it now became a source of concern. And in that instance, the outlier beating the traditional established forces at the polls. That's the opinion polls that were being presented before the elections. Those things got in the news because there were fresh information, there were fresh facts, there were fresh ideas about the elections. What we are traditionally used to with polling before elections is that you can almost tell that the traditional political parties, the popular ones, are going to be in the lead both in the polls, and the two traditionally most popular political parties in Nigeria usually lead the opinion polls even ahead of the election, so they just slug it between each other. But this time around, the opinion polls were different, so it got our attention. So and that is news, and is in the words of Okwechime, it makes news. For us here, I'll take a quick trivia before we go ahead. A quick trivia on what is news. Okay, the quick trivia is that news is anything the editor says it is. Yes, news is anything the editor says it is. Don't argue with the editor. It is the news when the editor says it is news. Then again, what is news? Okay, if you did not know about it a moment ago and you just got to know about it now, it is news. If you have not heard about it yesterday and it comes to your knowledge now, take it or leave it. It is news. So that's how we define the news. And for the purpose of our general discussion today, I would say news is largely a fair and accurate account of events. It must be fair, it must be accurate. So news is a fair and accurate account of events. And for the purpose of this discussion, again, I'll say news must be important. If it is not important, it is not news. Again, we must define the fact that for it to be news, let's stress the fact that for it to be news, it must affect a lot of people. It must affect a lot of people. And let me put this in perspective. A few years ago, I lost my father, and to me, it was news because I lost my father. But to anyone who lives on the street where my father lived before he died, it was just an event. It wasn't news. So if I'm going to talk about it, I'll say I lost my father. To me, because it is close to me, it is news. And to the person who lives on my father's street, and to you, most of the people in the audience who don't know me personally, who will be watching this video, but you don't know me personally, you'll be wondering, his father died? Okay, that's it. But to me, it is news. So it must be near to you. It must be close to you for it to be news. It must impact you for it to be news. So those are the different elements. Those are the different attempts to define the news. And as we look at the next phase of our discussions, we will see how those things play into each other.
Here at Mascom Niger, we make your educational journey engaging and enjoyable. Connect with us via X, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram at Mascom Niger. Mascom Niger, where knowledge meets entertainment.
So we are still on to your favorite channel, Mascom Niger, and it is the tutorial lecture series. And today we are looking at news writing and reporting. And we are discussing, we have looked at definitions of news, and now we want to look at what are those things that make the news. What are those things that make news, what are those things that make an event or a situation newsworthy, that makes it worth reporting. We call them news value traditionally, and it must be a novel thing. It must be a rare thing. It must be something that is not common for it to be news. It must be novel, it must be rare, it must be uncommon for it to be news. So I'll call it novelty or rarity makes the news. And we're also looking at the impact that it will have. Does it impact people? How many people will be impacted by it? That is why, for instance, an event in Ibadan will affect somebody in Kano. How will that happen? Okay, if, for instance, a truck that is meant to bring food from Kano to Lagos or to Ibadan is stopped somewhere on the way, and it becomes clear that all those trucks that are bringing food from Kano to Ibadan, stopping those trucks means there will be shortage of food in Ibadan. It becomes, the faraway event in Kano becomes impactful on people in Ibadan. So the impact it's going to have on people is important. Then proximity. How close is this to you? How close is it to you? Ideally, in the previous example of trucks being stopped from bringing food in Kano to Ibadan, ideally Kano and Ibadan are far in the local way of looking at things. But when it is close, it is proximal. It is proximity. So I'll reference the previous example I gave. When my father died, it touched me, but to those who don't know me, it was just that somebody died. So I think that defines proximity. Then what happens in your locality? For instance, there were blasts in the city of Ibadan a few weeks ago, and those blasts were as a result of explosives that miners use. And when the blast came up, if you don't live in Ibadan, it won't affect you in any way. But if you live or have someone who live in the city of Ibadan, you'll be concerned. It will touch you. It will prick your attention. So it is important to know that proximity or the locality makes news. Then the biggest source of news in any environment or community is the government. Government is always in the news. Policies, decisions, actions, inactions, whatever government does makes news, because government ultimately impacts everybody's life. Then we have what we call timeliness. Is it timely? When did it happen? So we talk about certain elements in that makes news, that makes what we call news values traditionally. So we look at timeliness. How timely is it? When did it happen? So we look at timeliness. We look at prominence. Prominent people make the news. Prominent places make the news. Prominent events make the news. That is why, as we saw recently on the African stage, we just concluded the African Nations Cup. It is an event that is prominent on the African continent, and it made the news significantly because long hours of TV, primetime TV, was dedicated to the coverage of the event, the games, and it is prominent. It is because it is important. It is prominent. It's popular. So, for instance, if tomorrow I decide to get on the road and travel to maybe go on pilgrimage or something, it is not news. But when the president of the country decides that he's going on pilgrimage, it will be in the news. So prominence makes the news. Conflicts, unrests, wars, they make news because they are not normal events in the ordinary course of everyday existence. Then we have what we call human interest. Human interest. How does it affect humans? How does it impact human life? How does it affect our daily life? It is emotional. Yes, emotions, human emotions. That's actually what defines human interest the best. It connects human emotions. So you will hear stories of when you hear stories of poverty. Maybe you say people in a certain country in Southeast Asia, or they don't have access to good potable water. They don't have access to electricity. They don't have access to good schools. And because there is a drought or flood in the place, the food supply chain has been disrupted. The humanity in you is touched when you look at those things, and that is why they make the news, even though they might not be in your locality. So they do not qualify based on proximity, but they qualify because they are human interest events. So it makes the news. Human interest makes the news. Then scientific and technological discoveries will always be in the news. When in Nigeria some years ago, in the 90s, late 90s, when HIV/AIDS was rampaging, a name became popular. The name of a certain Dr. Abalaka, because he made a claim that he has the cure for the ravaging HIV/AIDS pandemic at the time, and it became popular. Although eventually there were no global ratifications of his claim, but he became popular locally. The same thing with the discovery of major scientific discoveries. They tend to make the news when there is a major scientific discovery. When the Russians went to the moon for the first time, they made the news. When the Americans tried to go into space in their bid to launch their space program, and one of the space shuttles crashed, the one they call the Challenger, in the early to mid 80s, that they eventually tagged the Challenger accident. It made the news. They reported it widely. So scientific discoveries, scientific errors, scientific accidents, technological advances will always make the news. Then, interestingly, minorities, they also make the news. When you have a country where there are a lot of when there are majority tribes, when the minority decide to go against the grain or against the normal order of things, they are likely to be in the news. Or when you feel that the rights of minorities are about to be trampled, it is bound to get the attention of the media and get reported in the news. So let's try to put a wrap around this. The things that make the news, that makes for news value, we have timeliness. How recent is the event? We have proximity. We have prominence. We have human interest. Then we have oddity. Oddity is when this thing is wrong. It is according to the normal order of life. It is wrong. So let's say, for instance, if you catch a politician lying, it has come to be accepted that it is nothing wrong. Politicians lie as long as it serves their end. But when you find a priest lying, you are wary about it. It's odd because you don't expect priests by the very nature of their oaths and by the very nature of the fact that they have made commitments to piety. Yes, you don't expect a priest to lie. So, or when you find a priest in a popular area of town where you know that that's where prostitutes patronize, and it becomes odd. So those kind of things can get reported in the news. Oddity, when it is odd, it makes the news. So let's go further in our discussion to look at the sources of news.
Here at Mascom Naija, we make your educational journey engaging and enjoyable. Connect with us via X, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram at Mascom Naija. Mascom Naija, where knowledge meets entertainment.